You guys probably know I have teenagers, and so we have really interesting conversations about money all the time. And it's I want to share some of those examples with you and go through the process of how it's helpful to talk about money with our teens. Hello, 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 and welcome back to my YouTube channel, my little piece of real estate online. My name is Lydia. I'm the Fun Finance Queen, your money mentor online. Please feel free to join me every time you can and every time you see a video, but the best way to do that is to subscribe to my channel so you know every time I put something out. Now, today we're going to talk about money advice to teens. You guys probably know I have teenagers, and so we have really interesting conversations about money all the time. And it's I want to share some of those examples with you and go through the process of how it's helpful to talk about money with our teens. So, the first thing that I always tell my teenagers is to spend what you can afford. I want to give you a quick example of this. I was chatting with my daughter the other day, and we were out in town, and she saw a pair of pants that she wanted. And she was like, "Oh, I really like these pants. Can you buy them for me?" And I was like, "No, you're going to get paid for videoing me all this time, and you can actually use your money and buy those pants." And she was like, "Well, I've already planned for that money. I want to buy a pair of shoes, and they're on installment, and I'll pay X amount of money every month." And I was like, "Okay, let's have a money moment here." What that means is that you're spending money that you don't have yet in your hands. So, how about you buy something you can afford today and save up towards that thing that you want to be able to buy at a later date? So, she went away, she thought about it, and she came back and she was like, "Yeah, I'm going to do that." And so I was quite proud of her and super excited that at least I'm helping her to, come to a place where she's thinking about making decisions about buying what she can afford. So, the other thing that I like to talk about teenagers about is budgeting. So, budget, budget, budget. Even if it is your pocket money, budget for it so you don't overspend. Because it's so easy to have money in your hand and then all of a sudden realize it's not there anymore. And the only time that happens is when we don't budget. So, budget, budget, budget is something that our teenagers need to hear all the time. Now, if you're a teenager, I would also say think about consequences of unexpected spending. It's so easy to see something and say, "I'm going to buy that today." But it means that you're taking from somewhere else that you might have budgeted from, and that then costs you more money, potentially in interest, or it means you don't have what you need for that purchase that you have actually planned. So it's so important to think about what those consequences of unexpected expenses are. I always say, if, for example, if you go to the grocery store and you walk into the store and you see that pair of trousers that you really, really like, and it's sitting right there and it's calling your name, you can buy it, but it means that, that other thing that you had planned about for 3 months that you hadn't actually purchased, it's going to go out of the window unless you choose to go into debt. So unexpected expenses will happen, but you have to be able to have ways of budgeting for them in advance or finding ways to avoid those unexpected expenses. Not easy, especially in this time of cost of living crisis, but this is a reality that we all face in a means of managing our money better. The other thing that I think is really important to teenagers is encouraging honesty. Having a conversation with yourself or with your teenager, standing in front of the mirror and saying, "Okay, do I need to buy this thing?" Being honest with yourself and knowing, okay, if I actually tap that card, it's going to cost me X amount in overdraft fees because I didn't plan for that. It's not a part of my budget. So being extremely honest with your teenager, or having your teenager be honest with themselves, or even being honest with your teenager about how you have had money mistakes in your life is so, so helpful. So, the next thing I want to talk about is managing that first wage that comes into their hand. It's so helpful for you to say, "Let's sit down and let's talk about how you're going to spend that first batch of money that comes into your bank account." Because if we don't get into the habit of saving from day one, it becomes an issue. And that is my next point. Save from day one. Decide how much. If you make 100, are you going to save 20? Are you going to save 30? Are you going to save 40? What is your spending ratio versus your saving ratio? It's so important to have that decision made. Help your teenager through that decision. Sit down with them and say, okay, it is helpful for you to have some amount of savings at all times, and it helps for you to be able to set some of that money aside. The next thing I want to talk about is establishing credit. This is so important. The best way to establish credit is when you don't want it. I know it's a contradiction in terms, but it's the reality. Because every time you spend money on credit, they measure it against how much you have in credit and how much you actually spend. So it's so important that if you're a teenager and you don't need credit, you ask for it. You don't need to use it, just ask for it so you have it there. So you begin to establish your credit. Store cards are a great place. Now they charge ridiculous amounts of interest. So I wouldn't recommend that you actually spend the money on the card. Maybe buy one small item, pay it off in little installments so you don't have to actually, you know, overspend on it. But it's great to establish credit when you're a teenager because with time it becomes easier and easier to develop that credit and actually use it for bigger things like investments. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about is making small investments. So I always talk to my teenagers about either having small investments or small businesses or side hustles. So it's super important to be able to do these things as they're teenagers because I believe that everyone has an entrepreneur inside of them. We just need to look hard enough and find something that we like that will enable us to add additional income to our resources. So always talk to your teenagers about having small investments or small businesses or side hustles that will help them increase their revenue and therefore grow their financial status. Last but not least, I want to encourage all teenagers to start early. Start when you don't have any responsibilities. It's so easy to start saving, to start investing, to have smaller businesses, to manage your money, to manage your wage, to budget when you have no responsibilities. So I encourage you teenagers, or I encourage you parents of teenagers, please start now. Don't feel like you have to be 30 years old to start to budget. Now is the time when you can actually make a financial difference for yourself. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, you know where to put them. Put them in the comment box below. And I will see you on the next video.